Ryan Clark was caught on camera mid-sentence when ESPN fired him, and that footage is now going viral. The clips have sparked reactions across the NFL world, but the circumstances surrounding his firing are causing an even bigger controversy. Let me catch you up. Monday afternoon, Ryan Clark is sitting on the set of NFL Live, doing what he's done for over a decade, breaking down football, trading opinions, being the guy ESPN built segments around. Then it just stops. ESPN has cut ties with longtime NFL analyst Ryan Clark. In one of the more chaotic on-air exits in recent network history, Clark was in the middle of appearing on NFL Live on Monday, when network executives informed him he was being let go. He did not finish the program. Think about that for a second. He's talking football on camera, and somewhere behind the scenes, a decision gets made, a signal gets sent, and the guy just leaves. ESPN fired NFL analyst Ryan Clark mid-broadcast on NFL Live Monday, the first move in a wave of layoffs expected across the network this week. No goodbye segment, no tribute package. He's just gone. The footage of that moment, Clark's exit, the visible confusion on set, the show carrying on without him, spread across social media within the hour. And it wasn't just NFL fans passing it around. People inside the industry started reacting almost immediately, because the way it happened was almost as big a story as the firing itself. Here's why the timing floors people. According to The Athletic's Andrew Marchand, ESPN originally planned to deliver the news to Clark privately on Tuesday morning. Those plans changed fast. As media inquiries about a possible dismissal started circulating Monday, network executives grew concerned Clark would learn about his own firing from the internet before anyone told him directly. So instead of a phone call in private, ESPN made the call during the middle of NFL Live, turning the broadcast itself into the notification. Clark left the show before it wrapped and did not return. Let that sink in. The plan was a quiet Tuesday conversation. Instead, a live show became the room where a man found out he no longer had a job. Awful announcing dug into how leaky the whole thing got. Once word of Clark's impending departure began circulating externally, with a story poised to publish either before or right around the moment NFL Live signed off, ESPN scrambled to reach Clark first, preferring to have a very awkward conversation with Clark, instead of him discovering his own firing through somebody else's byline. There's even a detail about outlet Outkick giving the network a courtesy heads up before publishing. And Outkick had actually given ESPN's PR team an hour's notice before publishing, specifically so the network could comment and tell Clark itself, and that ESPN spent that hour pulling Clark off the air and tipping off another reporter instead. So basically, ESPN had 60 minutes to handle this like human beings, and instead used the time to manage press. That's the part that set the internet on fire. The reactions came fast, and they came from names you'd recognize. Emmanuel Acho, the former linebacker who now runs a popular YouTube show, didn't hold back. He called it wild that the network would fire someone mid-broadcast, pointing out why. He's brought NFL Live to Emmy Awards, of which they had never won before, and they will likely not win after, regardless of whether you think he's terrible. Objectively speaking, he got the accolades to prove his greatness. Acho then pushed further, asking why the network claimed it did it to protect Clark from finding out on social media, when they didn't want him to find out on social media. So you fire him during a show and pull him during the last 10 minutes of a segment. Last year, when I got fired, they had us find out on social media. Then there was the NFL influencer crowd. Dove Kleiman posted the news bluntly, framing it as something fans had wanted for a while, writing that it was breaking. ESPN has fired longtime analyst Ryan Clark, a long overdue decision. Bleacher Report's Thomas Peterson chimed in with his own theory about what tipped the scales, joking that Clark had a lot of weird takes, but saying the Cowboys are Super Bowl contenders was the final straw that got him canned. And it wasn't just media figures. Regular fans flooded threads dissecting the move, split right down the middle, some calling it overdue, some defending him as one of the best voices the network had. One thread summed up the divide, with fans saying things like how Ryan Clark was one of the best analysts ESPN had. Going to be extremely hard to watch now. That split, some cheering, some mourning, is exactly what made the footage spread the way it did. Nobody could agree on whether this was justice or a disgrace, and that argument alone kept the clip circulating for hours. To understand why this hit so hard, you have to go back to how Clark got here in the first place. He didn't walk into ESPN as a media star. Clark, 46, entered the NFL as an undrafted free agent out of LSU in 2002 and carved out a 13-year career primarily with the Steelers. After retiring following the 2014 season, he transitioned smoothly into broadcasting and steadily climbed ESPN's ranks. Before the suits and the studio lights, he was a hard-hitting safety who helped anchor a Pittsburgh defense during one of its best runs. For Steelers fans, Clark is more than a media personality. From 2006 through 2013, he started 109 games, recorded 448 solo tackles and 12 interceptions, and played in 2 Super Bowls. He won one of them, Super Bowl XL3, and that credibility followed him straight into the booth. Once he made the jump, he didn't just show up as a guest. Ryan Clark spent 11 years at ESPN, working his way up from operating the telestrator on Scott Van Pelt's late-night sports center to hosting NFL Live and appearing regularly on Monday Night Countdown, First Take, and Get Up. He built a reputation for saying what he actually thought, not what was safe, and that made him a fixture across nearly every NFL show the network had. The work got rewarded too. In May, the Louisiana native won his first sports Emmy for Outstanding Personality Studio Analyst. That's not a small thing in this industry. It's the kind of credential that's supposed to make you bulletproof, not expendable. But Clark's relationship with the network was never simple. Back in 2024, when his old deal ran out, he didn't quietly negotiate behind closed doors like most talent does. He went public. On Feb 14, Clark posted a 3-minute video on X revealing his contract had expired. He also admitted he felt slighted by the terms of his last extension. It wasn't what I wanted. I realized I had to do more. Honestly, I felt played. You know, the worst thing for anybody from New Orleans is to feel played, he said on the video. He doubled down with a promise, saying that within a few years, he'd be the best in the business at what he did. It worked. The network came back to the table. The 44-year-old Clark is finalizing a new contract with ESPN, said sources familiar with the parameters. That's believed to pay him over $2 million a year. After his previous contract expired, the 9-year TV veteran took the risk of going public with his free agent status. That new deal put him ahead of some of the network's other big names that would boost his pay beyond that of fellow ESPN analyst Mina Kimes, who earns $1.7 million annually, according to the New York Post. Part of the arrangement let him keep his outside ventures running too, since as part of the proposed ESPN contract, Clark will also be allowed to continue hosting Inside the NFL on the CW network and his popular podcast, The Pivot. So 2 years ago, this was a guy the network fought to keep, a guy who bet on himself publicly and won, which makes the ending feel even more jarring, because on paper, nothing about his value had dropped. If anything, his profile had only grown. He'd become a co-host of a podcast, pulling well over 1 million subscribers, and he was still one of the most quoted names in football media every single week. That's what makes the footage of him getting cut mid-broadcast so hard for people to reconcile. This wasn't some fringe personality who'd overstayed his welcome. This was a guy the network had just paid to keep 2 years earlier. Suddenly gone with no warning, live on camera. If you want to understand why ESPN's patience ran out, you have to go back to a single September afternoon, and one exchange that never should have escalated the way it did. It happened on Get Up, during a debate about a Week 1 game. During the segment, Clark and Schrager were speaking about performances of star receivers A.J. Brown and CeeDee Lamb, following the Philadelphia Eagles' 24-20 win over the Dallas Cowboys in Week 1 of the NFL regular season. Schrager was making a case that Lamb should feel decent about his day. Schrager had just finished making a case that Lamb, who had 7 receptions for 110 yards in the loss, should be feeling better about his performance than Brown, who had 1 reception for 8 yards in the Eagles' win. Clark disagreed. That's normal. That's the whole format of the show. But then it turned personal. He didn't just push back on the take. He questioned whether Schrager had any right to have one at all, telling him, "That's the non-player in you," since Schrager never played in the league. Schrager didn't let it slide. He fired back on air, refusing to be talked down to, saying, "Don't belittle me like that. I can come and say, as 3 ex-players are saying one thing, and give an alternative perspective that maybe CeeDee Lamb did play well." Clark's response only made things worse in the eyes of viewers, telling him, what I need for you to do is not get mad and let me finish for once. It wasn't about you, Clark said. The clip spread instantly, and not in Clark's favor. This exchange went viral, and people were upset that Clark tried to discredit Schrager's credentials to speak on this situation, as if the only people with opinions that mattered were those who had been on the field themselves. By that evening, Clark knew he'd stepped in it. He posted an apology, writing that today I had an interaction with my colleague P.S. Rags both on and off the air that I regret. I have apologized to Peter and taken accountability with ESPN leadership, but an apology doesn't erase the internal fallout. Front Office Sports had reported at the time that the moment left him in a fragile spot with the people who controlled his future. Front Office Sports reported at the time that the incident left him on thin ice internally, a label that appears to have foreshadowed Monday's decision. According to later reporting, the damage went beyond the on-air blow-up. There were reportedly off-camera tensions building too, with executives growing uneasy about how Clark carried himself around the building. The high-profile clash led to significant backlash and put Clark in a precarious position with network executives. Furthermore, executives reportedly grew increasingly uncomfortable with his aggressive communication style during recent production meetings, and the timeline stretches back even further than September. Reporting indicated the cracks had started forming months earlier. Sources have indicated Clark's standing at ESPN had been shaky since as far back as this past February, and it reportedly worsened after a heated on-air and off-air exchange last September with fellow analyst Peter Schrager on Get Up. This wasn't the only feud that followed Clark around. Either months later, he found himself in a public back and forth with Aaron Rodgers after Clark had criticized the quarterback's play, and Rodgers responded by taking shots at commentators broadly, saying they were highly vaccinated and influenced by mainstream views, referencing the cultural divide during the COVID-19 pandemic and Rodgers' anti-vaccine stance. Clark didn't back down, firing back on social media that he wouldn't let Aaron Rodgers' vax smokescreen distract me from the stench of the tape. He's entitled to his opinion, but to say you aren't concerned with what we say is a lie. I mean, it's the reason we are here. It's a continuation of his hypocrisy that started with criticizing ESPN analysts while being paid to be an ESPN. None of these individual moments were career enders on their own, but stacked together, the Schrager blow-up, the Rodgers feud, the reported friction in meetings, they built a file. And that file is exactly what surfaced the moment ESPN needed a reason to make cuts. Here's the thing that makes this story bigger than one guy losing one job. Clark wasn't an isolated incident. He was the first domino. Multiple outlets confirmed the same detail almost simultaneously. This was step one of something larger. ESPN fired NFL analyst Ryan Clark mid-broadcast on NFL Live Monday, the first move in a wave of layoffs expected across the network this week. The network confirmed the move is just the first domino in a wave of layoffs, expected to hit ESPN and NFL Network later this week. The reasoning traces back to a corporate deal that reshaped the whole operation. ESPN completed its acquisition of NFL Network and other assets earlier this year, in a deal that gave the NFL a 10% stake in ESPN, valued around $3 billion. The integration has triggered cost realignment across both operations. Merging two workforces means overlap, and overlap means cuts. A small number of on-air personalities based in Bristol are expected to be affected, along with a larger group of employees, both on and off camera, from NFL Network, and Clark's salary made him an obvious target in that kind of environment. The NFL analyst will be among the highest paid on-air personalities ESPN cuts, sources said, earning roughly $2 million per year. One outlet even framed the exit in blunt financial terms. ESPN saves $2 million parting ways with NFL analyst Ryan Clark. Compare that to what's happening on the other end of the roster. While Clark's exit was making headlines, reports resurfaced about the network's plans for Pat McAfee, who's reportedly in line for a deal nowhere close to modest. That report noted that ESPN and McAfee were discussing an extension, worth between $60 million and $65 million per year. Although no deal had been finalized, one personality getting pushed out the door live on air, while another negotiates a deal worth tens of millions. That contrast is exactly what fueled a second wave of reaction once people connected the dots. There's also the matter of what almost was. Clark had one enormous milestone on the horizon that he'll now miss entirely. Clark was expected to be a significant piece of ESPN's coverage of Super Bowl LXI next February, the first time in the network's history that it will broadcast the Super Bowl. Instead, he'll be watching it from outside the building he called home for 10 years. That detail alone explains a lot of the shock. This wasn't a guy fading into irrelevance. He was, by multiple accounts, being lined up for the network's biggest broadcast ever. And then, within months of that planning, he was pulled off a random Monday show and never came back. Not everyone bought the "we didn't want him finding out online" explanation either. There's a competing account that suggests the exit wasn't as one-sided as ESPN's framing made it sound. Awful Announcing has learned that Clark's early exit from the broadcast was characterized as a mutual decision rather than one imposed by ESPN. Whether it was mutual or not, the optics were identical from the outside. A veteran analyst disappearing from a live broadcast, no explanation given to viewers in real time, only surfacing later through reporters' phones. And the layoffs kept rolling right on schedule. Clark's departure is expected to be the first of several. ESPN and its newly acquired NFL network are preparing additional cuts on Tuesday. As part of larger Disney workforce reductions, the network, for its part, offered nothing beyond silence. ESPN declined to comment on Clark's exit or the expected additional layoffs. So where does this actually leave him? Not exactly out in the cold, and that's an important part of this story that a lot of the noise online glossed over. Clark has spent years building things outside of ESPN's walls, and none of that disappeared when the badge got taken away. Clark won't be without a platform. He remains a co-host of The Pivot, the independent podcast he runs with fellow former players that has built an audience of more than 1.4 million subscribers, and he's also hosted Inside the NFL on the CW outside of his ESPN duties. That's not a small landing pad. It's a built-in operation with real reach, one that doesn't answer to Bristol at all. He's even still showing up on ESPN's ecosystem in small ways, which tells you the split wasn't as total as the initial headlines suggested. Despite being laid off by ESPN, Ryan Clark is still set to attend MEAC Media Day, scheduled to be broadcast on ESPN+. As for what he said publicly since the cameras stopped rolling, not much, at least not yet. Clark has not publicly commented on ESPN's move, as additional on-air layoffs are expected at the network. Given everything we know about him, the public contract fight in 2024, the willingness to go on the record about feeling disrespected, the readiness to clap back at Aaron Rodgers or defend himself after the Schrager fallout, that silence probably won't last. Given how blunt he's been throughout his broadcasting career, few expect him to stay quiet about the Steelers, the league, or his own exit for long. Inside the industry, the reaction is still shaking out. Some, like the accounts cheering the exit online, saw it as a network finally cutting a personality whose takes had worn thin. Others, like Acho, saw a talented analyst treated like a disposable line item, discarded mid-sentence after over a decade of building the very show that fired him. What's clear is that the way this ended will follow Clark into whatever comes next. Not because his career is over, but because the footage of that moment, a man losing his job in real time on the air he helped build, is the kind of thing that doesn't just fade from the timeline. It's the image people will bring up whenever his name comes up again. Whether that's on a new network, a bigger podcast deal, or somewhere nobody's expecting yet. And given his track record of not staying quiet for long, that next chapter probably isn't far off. Former Pittsburgh Steelers Ryan Clark, fired by ESPN. Sigh. Ryan Clark fired by ESPN live on air during NFL Live Bettor's Insider. Heated on-air exchange pushed Ryan Clark out at ESPN, minus Yahoo Sports. ESPN parting ways with NFL analyst Ryan Clark ahead of network's first Super Bowl broadcast Outkick. Report ESPN cuts. Ties with Ryan Clark. NBC Sports. Ryan Clark and ESPN part ways before NFL season begins. Yahoo Sports. ESPN's Ryan Clark's career is over. Total Pro Sports. Ryan Clark reportedly agrees to new deal with ESPN. Yahoo Sports. Tunes in Ryan Clark, finalizing new deal with ESPN, minus front office sports. Ryan Clark laid off from ESPN during appearance on NFL Live. The Griot. Emmanuel Acho sounds off on ESPN, parting ways with Ryan Clark mid-show. Awful Announcing. Former Commanders starter fired by ESPN after 11 years. Heavy. Bombshell report reveals ESPN's massive plans for Pat McAfee after Ryan Clark firing. Total Pro Sports. Bombshell report reveals ESPN's massive plans for Pat McAfee. Yardbarker. Stephen A. Smith picks sides as Aaron Rodgers claps back at Ryan Clark. Sportskeeda. Ryan Clark learns of ESPN layoff on live TV. Yahoo Sports. Ryan Clark's ESPN run ended with an awkward mid-show exit, MSN. ESPN abruptly parts ways with Ryan Clark during NFL Live appearance. SI. Leak of Ryan Clark's ESPN ouster forced his removal mid-broadcast. Awful announcing. ESPN laid off Ryan Clark while he was on air. Black Sports Online. N laid off Ryan Clark while he was on air. Black Sports Online. https://sportsonline.com/2026-7 ESPN laid off Ryan Clark while he